Yes. There's my agenda.
Scott's here.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great, so everybody's here. Okay, thank you. So we are back. It's still Tuesday, the 15th. And we have Joe Aja with us, BGS, and Scott Moore is still with us. So now we are on to section 17, reallocations.
Yes.
So, it's a large topic. You want to just start at the top? Or do you have any overall comments on reallocations?
Not really. We've agreed with them, so it's not that bad at all, I believe.
Okay.
Some of them we proposed ourselves. So, for the record, Joe Aja, I'm the director for Van Construction with Buildings and General Services. And I'll work off the spreadsheet today in section 17 for reallocations. The first one up is for BGS, the 108 Cherry Street Garage. And we were proposing to reallocate $399,000, almost $400,000. And the reason for this is contracts closed out because we've been trying to get this money back over a number of years now. And as the contract closed out, the money came back into the bucket of funds. And so we're now getting it back again. So line 137, 138 are both from 108 Cherry Street.
137, 138, or 136 and 137 on ours?
I'm gonna just jump, Joe. They might have one line off, someone just here.
Well, there's a 399,000 and a 37,000.
But I gave Joe my copy, so we're all on the same.
Yeah, so now,
Okay.
so it's 136 and 137 for 108 Cherry Street. The duck IDs were from 20 and 22, so those will be the acts in 2022. 399,803 and 36 cents and 37,592.86.
And so that project is completely done.
It's, we never completed the project. That was to overhaul the parking garage. But we're in the process of selling the building right now. And so did not go forward with that project.
You know what? Pardon me, but I want to just be sure about Cherry Street because we were just talking about Cherry Street. But I think
32?
it's a different building.
Judicial
Yes,
Courthouse.
judicial.
Costello Courthouse is at 32 Cherry Street.
And this is 108 Cherry Street.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is where, sorry, AHS.
And that's where they used to be,
Yes,
right?
that's where they used to be.
Okay.
They've been vacant over a year now.
And we're selling it?
Yes, we're in the process. The potential buyers doing their due diligence. I think in the next by June, July, something like that. I think is closing date if all goes well.
And when will you be able to tell us more on the record about like the price?
So I'm on that date.
Okay. Okay.
Next up, line 39 is the Middlesex, sorry. I skipped ahead, 138, the Middlesex Field Station, and 139. Both of those, that was for when we moved public safety from Middlesex to Berlin. And again, this came about of just old purchase orders, contracts being closed out to the remaining funds there. And so we propose to reallocate those funds. 140, we have the Williston Public Safety Field Station. That project is complete. That is when we moved from the old facility on Georgia Road up a hill a little bit, opposite sides of the road. And the reason why there's quite an excess amount of funds is we came back in and met with the emergency board. Because at that point in time, prices were skyrocketing. And there was like lumber was the worst at the time, and prices for lumber was the day they dropped it off. When the truck driver dropped off the wood, the lumber, it was, here's your invoice, and we did not know what it was. We actually, the contractor actually worked well, working around getting prices of items purchased the right amount of time, so we're able to get $2.2 million back.
Because it was after those that time?
It was during and after, it was just a matter of working with their suppliers and, today's a great price. Yeah, and we did. So we allowed them to store materials on site to help out with that savings. 141, planning and reducing contingency. This is from 23, 425,000. We had, with everything going on with BGS and everything else, I would say we had a little bit of an abundance of planning and reducing contingency. And we were reallocating these funds to help out in the Department of Corrections to get their security funds. Is what we were giving these funds up. In the end, it just sort of balances out on the bottom line, but that's why BGS was giving up these planning funds.
Wait, I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The planning and reducing contingency funds
Uh-huh.
from Action 23, the $425,000. Because we were behind BGS with everything else that was going on at the club and the likes of that. We weren't participating in using these funds right away. So we gave those back to the Department of Corrections, who came in late on their request for their security funds. So we had given up their 425, and that was split over 2 years for corrections.
When you say security, it's not security in terms of a deposit, it's security in terms of
Of actual
physical
security, yeah, the
Okay.
raised ribbons, well, I'm on a little more fence here, more cameras and the likes of that.
Is that what's in section 3?
Yes.
On 22. It was 425,000.
Yes. It does.
Yeah.
Line 142, this is the Northern State Correctional Facility in Newport, the boiler replacement and planning and construction project. We have private funding on this, and right now we just barely gone out to bid and for design. We're in the process of getting our contract in place for design. It felt that with the house reallocating these funds, that we too couldn't live with that at this point in time, because we would not be needing the funds right away until we get a design complete and could actually start construction. That site is going to be a difficult site as the layout. There's not much land left, so it is going to be a little tricky. It'll take a little bit longer on the design to get that in place.
And so that's design.
This would go on towards construction.
If you had to separate out the design number, you could, right?
We have enough money presently from private funds for design. This was going to go to the construction.
Okay, so it's not planning. It's
Correct. It's the title carried forward, but yes, this would go to construction.
So do you not have to show the other funds that you're going to be using in this document, or is it somewhere else?
It would be in the next biennium. Is when we'd be asking for construction funds.
No, the design,
So the design was prior funds.
and it's already done?
We have the money in place and we're working on executing a contract right now for the design.
And so it's just
It's just,
it's not showing.
it is not shown. I don't recall if it was 25 or 26 funding. Sorry, 24, 25. This year.
Okay,
And on row 143, we have South Burlington Justice Involvement feasibility study for the reentry facility at the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility in South Burlington. Last year, the House had requested us to undertake this study. It was due in December of this year. And the House had also decided that it was probably premature to be putting the study in place right now, given we don't have land yet for a women's facility. We're still several years out. So they want to allocate these funds and get their issues with that.
but I thought we determined that we would not be using the Chittenden facility.
The House had to put language in last year to evaluate it. Could it be the building itself through remodeling or demolition and still reusing that site? And that's what this study was for. Could it be reused for men's reentry?
Chair, you and I battled with them on this right here, and it was just one of the things that we gave up to them, but you and I had said when we were doing our, committee of conference that they were way ahead of the game, and now they decided that they were.
Right, and I thought where they ended up too was that they weren't going to assume that anything would be at the Chittenden facility.
Well, they were.
So
it
it's
was-
on its own.
It was headed in that direction, and you and I were saying, why are we spending this money? It's so unneeded at this point in time, but that was what we had to give up to get the rest of what we wanted. So now they're just giving it back because they basically a year later are agreeing where yours and my position was.
Well, I still, all right. Okay, I still think I'm gonna wanna take out South Burlington in the description, because I don't think that's accurate anymore. But I can talk to them, we will talk to them. Okay, do you agree with that, that that's not accurate necessarily? I mean, it could be, but it's not
It could be,
necessarily.
yeah, I would. We own the building. Can it be used for men's reentry or something else? Could be what that study is about. I know, testifying in the House last year about this. Being premature at this point in time aside, was as it is right now. The way that facility is, it is not conducive to be used for a reentry facility. What could you do to that building to make it a reentry facility? Or is the other option to demo the building and build new on the site, or maybe even just go elsewhere inside the building? So the study would have brought all that together
Yeah.
and said, what is the best use for that site? That's all. And that's where we would end and then present to you that, here are the options.
Yeah, my understanding was that the goal was to find a feasible place for a men's reentry facility. And how the facility would be designed. And that is now getting disconnected from South Burlington. Not to say put into by some miracle get
Right, but this language is specifically for South Burlington.
originally,
Facility, yes.
yes.
And now that the money's being reallocated, that study is no longer,
Right,
won't happen.
right. All right, I'm just gonna
So if that study was needed
change
again.
that
we
and
would
we'll
get back.
see, we'll just see where it goes. We'll have that conversation. Okay.
And the next three, 144, 145, 146, funds are being reallocated by statute, anything greater than 5 years. For the present date. Has to be reallocated or dealt with in one manner or another. And what these funds are doing is that there are funds that have been sitting there, and because they're in the various projects, which is basically section 2. The way our process works is we do a contract, like for an A&E, and there's additional funds in there for reimbursables. If those funds aren't spent, then they get rolled back in. And that can happen with those funds multiple times throughout when we're doing major maintenance. It's just these funds have not been spent, so they're being reallocated.
Now. These would be going into. Bonded dollars,
They're originally bonded dollars, and now they're just being reallocated back because the fund.
but they're, we don't need to bond these, because they're,
That I don't know, but how that works with them.
because we have this.
This
money.
is all, Scott Moore, joint fiscal, this is all stuff that was bonded, and now it's gonna be coming back to be used for other bonded projects.
But it won't be.
It won't be.
Well, we can talk about it. We're not gonna go out to bond for this. I guess
No, no,
maybe,
this is
maybe we need
previously
another,
bonded money
right,
that didn't get used, so now we're able to use it for other bonded projects. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit with the caveat, the very last two, Joe will get to. Were cash that was pulled back from cash that wasn't spent to be spent on cash. But up until the very last two on the list here, everything was something that was bonded previously. As Joe was saying, the project may have been canceled or they didn't use all the funds. And therefore, it is money that can be used for other bonding projects, other bonded projects.
Yeah, or other projects, I would say there are other projects that are, appropriate to be bonded. So like long-term projects, because we are paying long-term on this money.
Right.
We're paying interest on that money now.
I would presume they are.
Yeah.
But if they're.
If it's bonded dollars
If it's
from the
bonded,
past,
right, if we
Yeah.
actually purchase bonds, yes,
yes,
we'd be paying interest, but
yes,
that's what it for the treasurer.
okay.
Next line, 147 is, not a BGS item, actually the total items. Next BGS item comes down to 152. Line 152. And that is 419,000, and that was originally appropriated section 2 for BGS, put a fence around the Bennington Battle Monument. We put that fence around the monument, and now ACCD is looking to use some of those funds for maintenance on the fence, and then also to continue their study of the monument. So those funds are being reallocated from section 2 to ACCD section.
And those were just from last year, I think, weren't there?
Yes, I
So,
think it was 24 funds.
okay, so 2 years, or 2 years in budget.
Yes, exit 23.
I'm sorry,
It was exit 23.
oh, 23. We're definitely paying interest on that. Okay,
Then the last one for BGS is row 157, and that is the 111 State Street in the Stack area. And is the area behind this, in the Supreme Court building, behind the court itself, where the library used to be. And we're using that as temporary coop space right now for judiciary. So until we work out all our dealings with FEMA and our rebuild for Montpelier, we're not gonna be back in that space anytime soon, so we're reallocating those funds until we need them in the future.
so you're not gonna use them.
That is correct. And those are,
So would you
Scott-
put this in some sort of, will this go into a fund balance somewhere? Because we won't keep
it
seeing
goes
this every
into the
year.
bottom line and it's balanced out. I work to make the math work for what the governor's recommend was, and these are cash funds. These are cash projects, so I think if we reallocated it and it went to what the total project or total capital bill line item was,
But it's not going to be spent. No.
not by BGS. So it went to whatever.
But these funds are used within the capital budget now. There's somewhere in here.
Right.
All right, all this money that he's talking about has been reused in all this capital budget.
Oh, no, I understand, but what I just heard was the 200,000, you don't have plans to spend that immediately.
That is correct.
You will spend it later.
No, we'll spend it within
No.
this budget here.
Yes. And then later we'll come back and ask for additional funds to what we're
They
doing.
weren't using
with
it,
111.
they weren't using
Oh,
it
you
for
are going
that
to spend the
project.
200,000.
No, this $200,000 goes back into the capital.
Right.
Because we
Within-
can't do this
right.
project right now.
Right.
Sometime in the future, it could be 5 years from now, we'd be back to ask for funding for fit up of that space.
This 200,000 is being used elsewhere within this budget. It wasn't used for this one intended project. So they pulled the monies out, but then those dollars are figured somewhere within this.
Yeah, it'd be good to have more clarity on that. Because the other ones that we have talked about today, those are actually in the areas where you're going to be using them. Where the DOC one is, and the Northern State is. And then the various projects are just various projects.
The DOC one for that 425,000 was allocated from section,
No, not the 425, but we can talk about that if you want.
oh, sorry, no, it was the 425 that BGS is reallocating back into the capital bill. Because Department of Corrections needed 425,000.
They could have gone anywhere. It just, that's where it just happened to go. These monies could be used anywhere within this capital bill. Anywhere it can go, anywhere it can plug it in. The bonded dollars have to meet the criteria of the 20-year infrastructure, and the cash can be used in anywhere that wants to be used. It just so happens on that 425 got used within the same field, but they can be used anywhere within this budget as what they are.
All right, well, I think if it's not gonna be used where it looks like it's gonna be used, we just need to figure out how to make that more obvious, because it's not.
So, Madam Chair, if I could, I'm hesitating only because I want to make sure Joe had a chance to finish before I jump in with some stuff. So
I have nothing else.
Okay.
That's all you, Scott.
Thanks, Joe. So maybe it might help just to start back a little bit with what the House does for reallocations. So Finance and Management runs a report for me. I'm happy to give it to you if you're interested in seeing it. It is on your website. This report is all of the capital funds. All the capital fund dollars that have not been spent over the past however many years. So you can see anything that's yellow is 2 years old or older. So the very first yellow one I think we see is BGS various projects, thanks, sorry, for $58,279, a very far right hand column. So what this is saying, here's money we were gonna spend on all these different projects. We did it. It's just sitting there in the account, hasn't been encumbered, hasn't been expended, no one needs it, basically. So we're gonna take that money back. So the very first thing we do, you can see at the top of the report, it says as of 2/3. So at the very first part of February, this report was run. I looked at all this and it's sorted out by different agencies. So the very first thing we do is we look at this and identify anything that's 2 years old or older. The very last page happens to be in green and it's cash. This is just starting to hit the 2-year limit, but it hasn't gone over 2 years as of yet. But just to give you an idea of how it all works. So what the reallocation committee does is we meet and we reach out to BGS and sit down with Senator Commissioner Manoli, and we say to her, can you talk to us about these different projects? Do you need this money? Sometimes these projects might be things the governor had already identified and it's already on the sheet. Sometimes they're things that are not identified. This very first one, for instance, a $58,000 line item. It was from 2015, it's an older project. And actually, if you look at Act 26 in 2015, Section 2 has 21 or so different individual items underneath BGS. So that 58,000 is a little bit of this project, a little bit of that project, I imagine, Joe, to just says various projects. So there is no one-to-one match for it anymore. If you go back to 2015, there are, I think, 21 different specific line items in major maintenance. So they've spent the original contract was 100,000, they spent 98,000. So there's $2,000 kicking around left over from that first project. And it goes to all of them. And I can't tell you exactly which one they were. Joe, I'm speaking out of turn and holler at me.
It actually is one item that was in the capital bill, and that is for the Sarah, the Record Center, and there was a renovation back in 2014 and 2015.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough funds, and so we've asked for additional money this year, $250,000 to finish that project. So that 58,000 is actually going to be reallocated to that project. It has been reallocated in the proposal.
To which one?
58,000.
Section 2.
Section 2.
Right, to which project?
Let's see what it's called. Line 12, Middlesex Remote State Archive. Oh, sorry, that's the next one. 13. Print and pulse bill.
Okay,
Peripheral power supply.
So sometimes we can do one-to-one matching very clearly. This dollar amount from the reallocation is going to a specific project over here. Most of the time, the projects that we reallocate don't exist anymore because they're finished or they got canceled. So we can't, money is fungible. It's all one big pot, if you will. It's liquid. We're taking this extra money and we're going to put it towards something. That's one that's very clearly what's going to match it. There's another one here, that is the, veterans home. That's the cash, that $1.5 million cash. That was originally for Brandon and Cardinal units. The, veterans home has said to us, we're not gonna use the money for that, but we really need to work on the American units. So the mechanics of the capital bill have basically said, we're gonna take the 1.5 million from you here in section 17. We're gonna give it back to you in section, I don't remember which section veterans homes under. It's near the military though. And so then we changed the language. So that's just the way we mechanically do that. There's one more, which is the Bennington Battle Monument. Last year's capital bill, I think it was $500,000 amount for the fencing. Well, they only spent 81,000. So therefore, there's 419,000 left over, which they could still use for fencing. But they said, you know what? We could also use this money as part of the other project to make the whole Bennington Battle Monument better. So let's mechanically, we're going to take it back from them. We're going to give it to them again with some additional money to get the 525,000. And that extra money will also come in the caveat that it can be used not just for fencing, but for fencing, planning, design, build, construction. I can't remember all the different things on it. So that's kind of how that works. So there are some projects here in the reallocations that are very clearly one for one, good to go. Most of it is just now been collated together and then spat back out into something else. So at the very bottom of this, you can see there's $5 million or so that the governor had found before the bill even got to us. But another million or so, arguably 2.5 million, because 1.5 million for veterans home was found by the repo committee and then reallocated to other projects. So grand total of $6 million of money that was either not being used because projects were canceled, or we're going to change the project at that particular agency, and then reallocate it within the whole capital budget. So out of that 6.7 million, the bottom line number, the $123 million total expenditure across 2 years, you need that 6 million to get that 123. So along the way, we had to spend that money to balance out the. Doesn't always go for one-to-one match because the project doesn't exist.
No, I know it doesn't always go one. It is helpful to see when it does.
Yep.
So that's very helpful. And then the other ones that don't. Well,
It's, there's not an easy way to say, oh, this 25,000 or this, one of them is $123 for the rail trails, I think. Where did that go?
no, exactly. But
You know,
you have a list of things that are getting put into the pot, then you have the pot, and then you have what was where it went. So just something like that might be helpful.
and so then the other things that we're highlighting here that are not BGS related, I can tell you, like I said, we took this report, we sent out letters to the agencies and said, let's meet, let's talk. Do you have need for this money? Some of them did, so we left it alone. Some of them did not have the money anymore, so we pulled it back. And we have letters from each one basically saying, this project was canceled, we don't need the money, this project had excess funds. You can have the money back. I'm happy to share those letters with the committee if you're interested.
Yeah.
Saying what the agencies had to say.
And if you're, I mean, once Joe's good and we're good, then maybe you can go over the rest of those with us, Scott.
I'm happy to pull up the legal letter, but I can tell you they pretty much all say the same thing, which is this money is excess fund you're not going to use. You're welcome to have it back.
Okay.
And I have them here in front of me. This says the remaining available funds of 67,000. This happens to be from. Sorry, DHCD, the remaining $67,000 are available for recapture, to be recaptured or reallocated here. So they basically said, this particular debt ID, we're using for downtown transportation funds. It was a pilot program. They were done with the money, the remaining $67,000. We can have back for other uses. Department of Transportation, same thing, they're saying there's 200 and some odd dollars, which is allowed to come back to us, they pull that one up. There's a small balance from old municipal mitigation and road grant programs. The bulk of funds remaining in use for scheduled projects. With that said, the remaining money can be reallocated. So that's pretty much all of them. DEC said that there was 249 old dollars identified from an older ecosystem restoration appropriation. Those funds can be reallocated as needed. You'll see that for all of those.
Okay, so well, I'm gonna have some questions on those.
Mhm.
But I just wanna go back to Joe.
Mhm.
Does anyone have questions or comments? Just stuff, okay. Okay. So thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll definitely see you again.
Sure. I believe tomorrow.
Do we have a question?
Oh.
Only maybe on
These in the,
Oh. The Weber courthouse. Is that,
Then here completely.
no, I was just trying to remember what it was.
PCB.
Joe knows what the question.
PCBs.
did we find PCBs in the Weber courthouse? There was some question that may have happened. In Warren, but your face.
I don't believe we tested for PCBs. We do test, typically always for asbestos.
Yep.
Sometimes lead, if it's pre-set 1978.
Okay. Well, let's not do that, so
Okay,
we don't find anything.
Jones.
I'm joking.
All right, that's good. So.
So our memory
is that just PCBs? Or you saying-
No, there was some question, for that, but,
I do not believe we tested for PCBs, and if we had and found them, then we would have abated them.
How do we decide when we test for it?
Right now, we're only required to be testing for asbestos. We're not required to, because there's a multitude of chemicals and minerals and everything else you would be testing for. So if there's history with the building, then we may do additional testing. If we're doing a lot of demolition and we know it's pre-1978, then we may be testing to find out how much lead is in there. But for asbestos, it's almost in every product out there. Window projects, definitely, we were testing all of the caulking and the glazing all the time on them. Yeah.
For lead?
Yes, for
It's
asbestos, for asbestos, yeah. For not for PCBs. We were not required to test for PCBs. And so if there was a known entity that said that, in the past that they had used it, then that would be one of those things, if we knew about it, we would test if we would be touching that area, whether it's through demolition or trying to remove materials that we know would contain that. Back in the years, it used to be in the ballast for fluorescent light fixtures. Now we don't test for those anymore. If we do come across a fluorescent fixture, they actually, the electrician, contractor gets a box from the supplier and they're given the supplier and they're sent back and processed.
Yeah, because it's a kind of semi-hazardous waste.
Right.
It's not
It's just
quite
contained, it's right here, right.
Okay. Did we have a question about the Wi-Fi? Did we ever figure that out? Wi-Fi in the prisons.
Prisons.
That's not VGS, that is corrections that be the Wi-Fi. Because that's specifically for them.
Right, but it's building related, so that's not.
They hire their own company to come in. And so we provide oversight over that as to where they're running their conduits, placing their nodes out there and the likes of that, where they're putting their racks, whether or not air conditioning is required because they're adding more to this server room, if you will, closet. But that's as far as we go with that. They're responsible for everything else.
Okay. So is it happening?
That I don't know. It very well could be.
So it could be happening and you wouldn't know. That's possible.
Yes.
Okay.
And what it is that I have what we call liaisons. There's 6 project managers who are liaisons of their 6 maintenance districts. And what they do is they interact with our maintenance staff on a regular basis. Sometimes, even multiple times a day. And they would be picking that up, working with BGS maintenance and corrections to go, yes, it can go here. There's the wrap for the conduit and it can go in this closet. And so that's just a regular thing to
I just
do.
want to be very clear that Chair and you were on the same page. Are you asking that, is the Wi-Fi going in?
That's what I want,
Okay.
yes.
The Wi-Fi isn't going in because we would be the ones to put it in. We would be the ones, there's no dollars in there for them, from their testimony, of any of the Wi-Fi going in, because they don't have the funds to do that.
And I thought they were getting the funds somewhere.
That was our conversations that we've had, that we were, unless I missed the conversation, it was gonna be up to us to provide the funds for them to put the Wi-Fi in.
Okay, all right, well, they'll
But
be
that would
here
be
later.
Department of Corrections that
Okay.
get into that for you.
Okay. Okay, we'll ask. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Good to know those horrible prices have come down.
Yeah, but now we're dealing with terrorists.
Yeah,
So we're getting back to, who knows? It's up, it's down. So far, nothing drastic has come across that I've seen, so that's a good thing.
okay,
So, but then again, many day buy here again, so who knows?
yeah, yeah. Thank you for your work.
You're welcome. 2 months.
Yes.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay. So, Scott, if you don't mind.
I'm
I just
happy
have a
to,
couple more,
I'm happy to try to answer.
if you're ready, or I can ask
Well,
later. But
could
since
ask,
we're
and
in this,
I'll tell you what I can tell you.
okay,
How's that?
sounds good. Just because this is a completely different part of the bill.
The reallocation, yeah.
Yeah.
This is like positive money, everything else has been a little bit negative money.
Right, but just,
How that balance.
it's really helpful when something goes from one place to another place, but I totally understand why that can't always happen.
Mhm.
And it probably can't happen most of the time. So, the first, the ACCD Highgate Native American Cemetery,
Yeah, that was identified by the governor. The governor had pulled that together, so I don't know why that would be something that they had come up with. That wasn't one of the things we did in the house.
okay. But so it was not done previously.
Correct, so this would have been, let me open up. Spreadsheet here real quick.
Is it 2005? Or maybe that's just 20.
So the way that the department IDs, those little numbers that we see there, the way they work at BGS is different from other agencies.
Yeah, that would be 71.
Yeah, but other agencies, they start with their business unit number. So the 7110 would be the business unit for ACCD. For instance, us as a legislature, everybody in this room, we're 01210.
Hmm.
So if we ever refer to that, that's what we'd be referring to. So here would be the 71110. And what this would have been something back in 2000, I believe. So it was some old money kicking around. I'm happy to reach out to them to see if we can figure out why that was there. That was not one of the ones we did in the repo committee because it was already on the sheet when we got it.
But are they proposing to use that money now?
No, they're saying that you can have it back. Take it and use it and do what you want with it.
Okay, did the House get testimony that it's not a needed
We-
project?
We took the governor at face value from the governor recommend.
Okay. And so then the next one, or does anybody else have any? Okay. The downtown transportation fund pilot.
Yep.
So did they not use it at all? Do you recall?
No, my notes here say that grants were awarded. First in April 2019 with 4 grants that were awarded for Randolph, Grandview, Montpelier, and Bristol. And then there was some grant funding awarded for Burlington, but it was recaptured. Up until last fall, they were holding on to some funds for the completion of the Montpelier project. If the city let them know the funds are no longer needed, therefore there's $67,000 remaining balances available to be recaptured.
Okay,
This was in 2018, You can see by the number 18 there, 1807.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Then I took, which is the rail trail for $112. Again, that was the gov rec, I can tell because it's not highlighted. And as such, that's something the governor had already gleaned from leftover monies kicking around.
and I applied them for noting $112.
Yeah. The municipal mitigation program, I'm just see what they say, the next slide. Which is part of our transportation.
Now, would this have come from the T fund?
I don't know, Madam Chair, my apologies. I don't think it would have been, I think it would have been specifically something from the capital bank. But sometimes the chick takes some transportation and the capital bill has some interchangeability in the past, but I'm not, before my time, I'm not sure exactly how it works. But it would have been a capital bill, appropriation. But let me just look here real quick. They basically just said that at the end of this fiscal year, they expect to have that money left over, they're not gonna use it, therefore we're gonna have it back.
Okay. After this year, so that's pretty recent.
So by this fiscal year, so that would have been July 2024.
So is that on this list somewhere?
I'd have to look to see if we got it.
It's numbers are not separate. Okay.
Um, the municipal mitigation program, they're saying that there's $19,342. It's unobligated. They would draw these funds if some towns submitted revised applications for their projects. They're expected to see that, therefore they expect by FY26, the $19,000 is available to be reverted to the capital funds.
Okay, so just going back to that. On 107, on this document, it's 782,000.
Keep in mind that that document was created at the start of February. By the time the repo committee went and met with everybody in March, that some of those funds may have been already spent. So you might see,
So 700,000,
it's a point in time.
760,000.
That document there is a point in time.
They quickly spent that.
Yeah, you get a letter saying you have money, if you don't spend it, we're gonna take it. Goes fast. So that's why you might see some differences there.
Okay,
The Better Roads Grant Program from the Department of Transportation. Let me just find that. Number. Just trying to find the notes specifically. They shared with us how the monies were to be spent. It looks like there may have been some matching. And there was a cancellation of part of the projects. And then they again expect to end on FY 2026 with the remaining balance that can be reverted to the capital fund. And since the capital fund is a 2-year bill, so that's where that $41,000 comes from. And we talked a little bit about the benefit and battle module already.
yeah. Okay, yeah, that one I'm straight on. Does anyone else need?
That was a little bit tricky because we are using this $419,000 within the $525,000 expenditure up above. That extra $100,000, the House basically said, feels like you could use extra money to make sure you take care of the market. So they gave us some extra money to do this part of the project.
And how much extra?
From 419 to 525, don't ever do math in public, but it's 106,000.
Let me
Okay.
find the phosphorus removal.
Is that the agricultural water?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 109 of this.
Oh, that, the other sheet I passed out this morning, yes. This surplus was due to a project being canceled, therefore the funds are available to be reallocated.
And do we make any effort, like, so this was a water quality project, do we try to find water quality projects to put those funds in?
It's possible that you could reallocate it to a water quality fund, keeping in mind that these funds are getting older. So at that point in time, they have to be reverted back to the capital bill at some point. So I think part of the project was, we'll ask for other clean water funding, but this project, now that it's aging, we're not gonna use it, therefore we can take this money back today.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand, but I'm just thinking we have water quality projects in the capital bill.
Um,
What's this money, Chair? We're reallocating. We're making those decisions.
Yeah.
We're not anybody else but us, as far as what the House or the Senate. We're taking these these funds that aren't expended, and they're putting back into bonded dollars, and we're making those decisions about where they go.
Yeah, no, I understand, but there sometimes is a philosophy in that, and sometimes there's not, and so I'm trying to, I would like to know what has any.
There was a
What kind of thought
discussion
on it?
about using this money specifically for water quality that I recall, or that I was in the room for. Doesn't mean that you talked about it when I wasn't there.
Okay,
The next line, the agency of education, the $19,000. Let me open that up. This just says the minimal reallocation from the 2021 is recommended as the agency prepares for potential emergency aid needs. So basically, they had money left over from 2021, but they're taking back. The Department of Environmental Conservation, the $249 million. This was an older system restoration appropriation. Again, this is just money that's left over. Isn't really good project. So essentially, it's just kind of just change, if you will. And the last two things, 1.5, where I talked about 1.5 million for Grand Cardinal, which is going to be used for the American Union.
alright,
And the $200,000 for the state stack area renovations, is being pulled back with the VJS is going to use it within the VJS funds.
within that area
Yeah, there's some roof.
or somewhere else.
Yeah, there's some roofing that needs to be done. I think the actual language of the bill talks about, the ability to move some funds back and forth between projects or vehicles. I don't have the bill right.
Okay, well, this is good, this is helpful.
Yeah.
Alright,
It is kind of a fun process in many ways. The committee meets with everybody. Minus the fact that in order to be able to schedule time for the committee and agencies, they met at 8 o'clock in the morning and I live an hour away, so.
oh no.
45 minutes. So.
Feels like an hour, bro, well, depending on the weather too.
Other questions that can help with reallocations at all? Basically, between the governor and the House, there's $6.7 million of funding freed up from other projects that is used inside the capital.
Okay. Yeah, we'll certainly talk about this tomorrow. I'm just looking at what we have for tomorrow's agenda. We have the Agency of Administration and BGS. And Commissioner Manoli will be here.
And she can talk too about some of the projects that she had. For the reallocation dollars and how they used it.
Right. I'd like to hear from some of the folks who didn't complete the projects, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to send the committee the contact information, you can have them come on or address questions you might have as to, you know, was the project canceled, why you didn't finish it, was second money useful? So I'm happy as that.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all I have. Anything else?